Hello everybody, sorry for about a little bit of a hiccup at the beginning of this. Streaming is a problem, we know, and I'm not the best person to do a lot of the streaming because I often tend to make significant errors. Look, the reason why we wanted to have this live stream today is that there is a very important subject that we must talk about, and that is domestic violence. The Child Protection Party in particular uh, is a party that makes a strong stand, I guess like most parties, against against domestic violence. And it's important that we understand that, or that we help you to understand the impact that domestic violence has, just not on women, but particularly the children within those families. There were some interesting stories, some sad stories that have come out over the last couple of weeks that have captured the nation's imagination and helped us to realise, as tragic as those situations were, the, the vile nature of domestic violence and how that impacts families and how that impacts kids. And particularly, it's really, really sad, as we saw with the Hannah Clark story, that that children have lost their lives as well as their mother. I find this extremely emotional and extremely sad that this has happened. Um, and I just want to emphasise a couple of points, I guess, from the male perspective, and that is, as a male who's worked in the area of domestic violence for many, many years and worked with men who are violent and abusive, on every occasion where I've done that work, I am appalled at the behaviour of these men, and I'll often say to the group, as a male, it's embarrassing to know that there are men in this world who behave the way that you guys have behaved. And when I see, and when we're made aware, I guess, that every day, or at least once a week, a woman is murdered at the hands of a violent and abusive man. And then when you see stories where kids are also killed, it is extremely sad. And the question really that we have to be asking ourselves is, what are we doing in order to mitigate against this continuing violence? And I think the most important thing that we need to do is make a stand against violence against women, violence against anybody for that matter, but particularly violence against women. Primarily because us men seem to believe that somehow we have a right to control and to govern other people's lives, and that women become some sort of a property that we own and that we can determine what they and the children do according to our wishes. They become subservient to us, in fact. And I find the whole notion of this sense of power and control and dominance appalling. I see men who think in this way as weak, as pathetic, as lacking any courage or intestinal fortitude. I'm repulsed, quite frankly, by these men who behave in this fashion. And I think, and I hope, that those of you out there that are viewing this video will see it the same way, that we cannot tolerate this sort of behaviour towards women, and we cannot particularly, obviously, tolerate that behaviour towards children. Children grow up in an environment where the way that a male responds to a woman becomes the pattern for them. And we find either women become very subservient, or girls become subservient to men when they get older, and guys become dominant and want to influence their power over their partners because that's what they've seen their father do. And I think that when we look at how that spreads like infectious disease, we realise that we have to put a stop to it, and we have to do something about it now. And I would suggest that anybody who's got an issue around their behaviour should take some action in order to have that behaviour addressed. And there are plenty of services in every state that will be able to help you to address that. But you need to take responsibility for it. One of the things I came to realise when I was working with these groups, and I'd worked with thousands of men over the years, is that unless you take responsibility, unless you admit that this behaviour is damaging others, then you alone can change it. But until you take responsibility, until you acknowledge the damage that you've done, then it will never change. And sometimes, quite frankly, you may never, ever have that relationship back the way that you particularly would have liked it, or for it to be a loving, caring and nurturing relationship. Because I do wonder how many women stay in relationships because, as they say, they can't leave the relationship financially. They're threatened by their partner that they'll kill them, just as happened to Hannah Clark and her children. They financially can't do it. They're fearful of leaving. They don't know where to go. They don't have any real support, they believe, and so they remain in this toxic relationship. Well, it's unacceptable that we as men choose to behave that way. And the thing I think that I find the most horrific, really, apart from the level of violence, is the fact that men want to blame the woman for their behaviour. Now, we're all responsible for our behaviour, no matter what it is. And I'm not suggesting for a moment that somehow men are the only people that from time to time act badly. They're not. We all act badly, no matter what sex we are. But behaviour which is controlling another person, manipulating them, making them feel lesser, making them psychologically harming them, making them believe that they are inferior to you, name-calling them, diminishing them, is dangerous. And when I ran these groups, particularly when I ran the anger management programs, I came to realise that there are a number of things that men feel. They feel hopeless, powerless and helpless. And because of those things, they then must control and manipulate others. But when it gets to the point whereby that male believes that he cannot live without the woman and the children, and takes the steps, as he did with Hannah Clark, and decided at the end of the day that he would kill them because, for whatever reason, I guess, he believed that he can't live without them. One's got to realise how crazy that shit is, and that someone at some point probably knew that this woman was in this terrible situation. They may not have known the outcome, but they certainly may have known that she was at risk and her kids were at risk. And I think it's really important that we try and connect with those people that may be in relationships that are controlling. You know, sometimes we can be out at a dinner, or we're out with some friends, and we notice that something is said to the woman by her partner, and we think, hey, you know, that didn't seem right, that there's something wrong there. And it doesn't hurt to be able to say to the partner, to the woman, I noticed that when he said this to you, you kind of flinched a little bit, and I'm wondering what that was like for you, and does that sort of thing happen often? And to help people, I guess, to be aware that there are other people that are looking after them, and that there are other people that notice some of these behaviours. I think one of the biggest problems we've got is that we allow these behaviours to slip by. We choose not to do anything about them. We choose to ignore them because there's a belief somewhere out there that says that we can't become involved in family disputes or family problems. Look, at the end of the day, if we could save a life by stepping in and letting someone know that we will hear them and that we will understand what's happening for them and that we will house them if need be, or give them some money if necessary, or find a place in which they can live securely, if we can find a way to do that, then we're doing a service, because that act alone may save a life or a few. And so we need to think about different ways that we can do things that are going to improve the life of others and help them to become aware that we are actually thinking of them and we're concerned about the way their partner is behaving. There was a story that was referred to today here, which says that women prosecutes former partner who doused her with petrol in a case in Queensland. And the interesting thing about this article was that the police refused to get involved because there was, and it's here, you can just see it here, I'll just highlight that bit there, where they said, because there was a low level of public interest. How bizarre is that? That we have these issues right at the moment. We have one woman dying a week, and then the police in Queensland, morons, chose not to respond or not to take any action against this guy who threatened to splash his partner with petrol, and he said that he was going to burn the house down, and we didn't take any action. How is that caring for this woman and maybe her kids? What is the message that we're sending if the police themselves are saying that there is nothing that they can do? I cannot count the number of women that have come to me over the years and said, I'm fearful of this guy, but the police refuse to do nothing until he attacks me. So when he leaves a bruise, or when he stabs you, or hits you with a bat, or stabs you with a knife, or whatever it is that he may throw you violently against a wall, until that person takes that action, the police will not act. Well, that's crazy. There was a time when women were able to file for an apprehension violence order based on the fact that they were fearful. And even if, and I hear men say, oh yes, but that's perhaps a spurious belief, that perhaps is not necessarily true. Even if, on some occasions, it is about someone wanting to get even with another, and it's an unhelpful comment, that the majority of women who fear their partners need to be protected. Every woman, actually, who fears their partner needs to be protected. There may be some cases where that's not true. But the fact is that on a majority of cases, so what do? Do we take care of those few vindictive type responses? And obviously, if we do proper investigations, we can figure that out often. But, for those that are serious, how many lives will we save if we start believing the women in terms of how they're being treated by their partners? So I think some really strong action needs to be taken here. And we as the Child Protection Party want that action taken immediately. We want to protect the women and the kids. At the end of the day, kids that are living in violent and abusive households wind up with emotional and psychological damage, sometimes physical damage because they get caught up in the physical abuse, mental health issues. They wind up with sometimes suicidal ideation because life for them is just too traumatic. Why would we want a child to go through those sorts of experiences? Well, we don't. I don't. I'm sure those people that are watching this video don't want to see kids go through that experience either. So let's do something about it. Contact your local MP. Let them know that the laws need to be changed to better protect women. It isn't enough for Morrison and for the Parliament to sit down and address this issue during question time or whenever it was that yesterday. and for them to be emotional. I appreciate that they are, and I appreciate this is a really emotive issue. At the end of the day, you've got to get off your asses, and you've got to make policy, pass legislation that's protecting women so that this stuff stops. Every week, on average, a woman dies at the hands of her partner. We as men need to articulate our disdain, that it repulses us to think that our gender behaves in this most horrific manner. And we need to do something about it, and we need to do something about it now. So join the Child Protection Party to continue this fight for women and for kids. This is our fight, your fight, my fight. It is our community's fight. And someone needs to be standing up and saying enough is enough. And we're the political party that's doing just that, because enough is enough and it has to stop now. Put your comments on the bottom, subscribe to our YouTube channel, become a part of the solution, not part of the problem. Join us. Thank you very much for being with us. Go to our Facebook page, have a look at some of the stuff that's on there, join the Child Protection Party, have a look at our web page, and become a part of the Child Protection Party, because these are issues which are important to not just us, but the community and all of us generally. Thank you for watching.